Is Nathan ready? Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's Thursday, March 21st at 8:30 a.m. It's the annual trust meeting of the Mojave County Employee Benefit Trust Fund. It's the Board of Trustees. And we'll start with our call to public. Right, Ginny? Okay. I'm going to open up the call to public. If anyone would like to address this trustee board about anything not on the agenda, now is the time. Going once, twice. I'm going to close the call to public. Item 2, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the EBT board meetings held on September 26, 2018.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 3, our trust financial report. Erin? Oh, is that you? Is that Coral?
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Lloyd.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Take just a few minutes to review the financial information. The first group of pages in your prepared book include our estimated or projected information for the current year. We are very close in reconciling the prior year. We put this together before we had received the draft audit, which is still in a draft stage, but those numbers tie out closely to that draft audit and the performance of the trust. For the fiscal year ending last year, then the trust actually gained about $414,000 to the bottom line. That carried over into the current year. If we essentially spent just about all of the funds this year, which we should come below that number, but on an estimated basis, we would end up essentially beginning next fiscal year, with about a fund balance of about $8.7 million. The reserve that the actuarial would have recommended that we received last August is about $7.4 million, so we are above that number by a respective margin. Going into the budget, of course, for next year, we discussed that yesterday. We would continue to budget the $13.5 million in the event that all the funds were needed to pay for some high claims and that kind of thing. By doing so, again, we would essentially mirroring the budget of last year, staying flat, potentially decreasing the balance down to $7.7 million if we had another million in high claims. So going to, I'll skip all the details of that. There's a document, they're not page numbered here, but the 1, 2, 3, the 4th page back with the actual charts. I don't know if you can.
Is that these?
Those.
Where is that? I'm sorry. Which tab? 4?
Oh,
Which tab?
well, we can skip it, but there's charts in there graphing essentially the cash in the treasurer's account and the fund balances over the past many years, at least 5 years. And again, noting on the subsequent page, again with another chart, we're comparing the fiscal year basis and the calendar year basis in order to tie back with basically the claims that are paid on an annual basis. So if there's any questions on how the budget process goes, right now it's a very preliminary stage, then I'd be happy to answer those and any information on that. Otherwise, I'll move on into the actual draft presentation of the audit.
Is there any questions so far?
Okay. So in the actual draft audit, let's go to page 4 and 5, which are essentially the primary information on both the self-insured trust fund, the SIR, and the employee benefits trust fund. So for the employee benefits fund, again, it's reflective on the very top of page 4 for that fund. Everybody see that? Getting close, okay. Again, the cash and cash equivalents, 10.1 million. We've got a bit of receivables. Some of the accounts payable there are listed, well, all the accounts payable there are listed, the claims, the IBNR, and we get to the bottom of the page, essentially that's the balance sheet of about the 8.7 million in the fund balance going forward. The page 5 is essentially the income statement, showing that our charges for services, particularly in the Employee Benefits Trust Fund, were 13.2 million of all the revenue types that we get, which are essentially the transfers from what we're charging each of the departments for the employees for their, the county share of the premiums. And then there are some reimbursements that come in for the stop loss and some things like that. The expenses are listed there. Obviously, the primary number there is the 11.1 million for the claims. The professional services are the administrative portion of the contracts, and then those total 12.9 million for a net operating income of 347,000. The fund also earned about 88,000 in interest income. Again, we're looking at a net income for the prior year, 414,000. And that affirms that the fund balance, so that the information that the county uses ties out to the audit and also back to the vendor. So again, we're looking at a pretty good position. We're happy that we are above the recommended reserve, and you can make any recommendation at that point as long as you're above that, and is where we would make the recommendation for you to approve. Or any questions? Okay.
In the past, we've given, what do they call it, a vacation, or whatever it is on taking, is that the funds, the excess funds, are they at a point where they would be wise to do that again?
I would say no.
You'd say no?
That would be my strong recommendation, to leave that as is. In the event
reserve,
that
yeah.
claims grew, then we would immediately need to impact the county, the citizens, the employees, and so I would recommend that you go ahead and leave the cushion there for future years.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe you have to have a motion to accept the reports.
So moved.
Thank you, second.
All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Number 4, discussion and possible action regarding prescription benefit manager contract award effective July 1 of 2019.
Okay, Madam Chair and trustees, you've got a memo in your packet, and you've got a horrifically long 11 by 17 packet of information in front of you. I'm going to summarize and then introduce the folks from Navitas to just walk you through the recommendation. So the background here is that the trust has been with Magellan since July 1 of 2009. And that contract was awarded as a result of a competitive process similar to what we're doing today. We've had some service issues in the last couple of years with Magellan due to account management turnover, some IT issues, mostly associated with their growth. Frankly, have not been happy with the support they've gotten either on a clinical level or on the administrative level. Coincidentally, the 3-city consortium that we run also had Magellan, also had those issues, made a decision to go out to bid. So what ECA did is we took them both out to market at the same time, just because together they were roughly double in size. Geography really has no impact on it. It's strictly a matter of what the purchasing power was. So we approached 5 firms that are in this segment. And what we looked to do in there was to do a couple of things. One, we wanted to clearly improve the customer service, the support we're getting to the county, to us. Secondly, we wanted to improve the financial performance. And third, tied with that, we wanted to change the nature of the contract. So the current contract is what's called kind of a traditional pricing model, where they go out and then they develop contracts with drug companies, get rebates, get fees, whatever, and pass some portion of those through. we wanted to move to what's called a transparent model, where the only source of compensation to the prescription benefit manager, PBM, was the fees the trust paid to them, and then 100% of any of that alternative revenue passed through. And it's not a complimentary term, but the reality is this industry is known for playing financial shell games. We like to work with firms where that's not the case, because we don't believe you can take money from two sources and be loyal to the client. So we requested the companies bid it on either of those two models, because we recognized that Magellan was already on the traditional model. We went through the evaluation. I'm really sorry Amanda's not here. I know you've all worked with her before. This was actually her first time to do the analysis. So all that paperwork that you're looking at was her first time actually crunching through it. And she was petrified that she'd actually have to present it today, so she's probably happy not to be here today to be doing it. So we looked at it, we went through, and at the end of the day, what we came back to is, and it's the same recommendation that the other three cities went, we're recommending award to Navitas based on our experience with them. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, we believe that making the switch on the financial end will save about anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 over the current spend net bottom line basis. But we also believe that both the clinical and the administrative support will be so much better, even not comparing to Magellan, because I think, honestly, that was so weak, it's not a good comparison. We had them put some information. I'll introduce again Carla, the pharmacist and consulting pharmacist, and Laura, her make everything happen and make all the bad people go away person, in just a second. But in front of you is a slide deck. And in the process, the heads up and the expectation setting part of this is that when we go through this, there's going to be a word we use is disruption. There will be disruption, and it's going to occur primarily around the formulary for what medications are covered and what medications are not, and to what tier they're assigned. So when they get up, when you look in that very last tab, we gave all of the PBMs de-identified 12 months or 24 months, of actual scripts. So they actually look through those, they lay them up against how their structure works, and then they identify the people who would be disrupted. And we look at it in literally across the spectrum, or they do. And then what we do with that is we will work with them and the patients, and as necessary with Laura and their clinical pharmacists, with their physicians, to either transition them or leave them alone over a period of time. In certain cases, for example, on the specialty meds, the general orientation is you don't touch them. You leave them, you hold them financially harmless because you don't want to disrupt that level of treatment. But in other cases where it's branded to a more cost-effective, clinically same efficacy type medication, you give them 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, to transition off the drugs. So our main thing is we would expect to be done with disruption within 120 days and managing that. And literally what that comes from is when's the last 90-day refill that might have a conflict going to be filled. So we'll work through that with them if you accept the recommendation, and to a very limited extent with HR. Because HR basically where they get involved is only when an employee comes in with a complaint, and then they would pass them in to us. Madam Chair?
So, because we have employees watching, so can you just kind of walk us through what they might expect when they go get their medication with this disruption?
Okay, I can. So what we'll do, and again, I think you guys might want to come up too on this. What we'll do is when we get closer in, okay, within that last 90 days, we'll pass a current meds file to Navitas. They'll identify where the disruptions are, and we'll letter them saying, starting July 1, this medication is going to change. Here's a number you can call, and then they'll work with them, and I'll let them pick it up from here on how the process specifically works for that disruption. The middle. You need a green light.
Technology is not my thing. Mine's not. Oh, yes, green now. Oh, goodness, thank you.
It's red.
No, it's not. For real. There we go. All right, thank you. So I'm just going to walk through a high level of our implementation process. So we do have an implementation project manager, and we do have a coordinator, and we would meet frequently with the team at Aaron Collins and also the team with Meritain, just to establish your benefit and then the file exchange so that we have all of your member information being sent on the eligibility file. Once we have that information, we can send out welcome letters to your members to alert them that there is a change to their benefit. let them know that they need to present their new ID cards when they do visit the pharmacy for the first time, so that pharmacy can enter the new ID number into the system and then process the claim. We give our customer care team the information about your benefit so that in the event a prior authorization was not entered correctly, or maybe it did not come through on the historical claims file, we empower our customer care team to authorize that medication for the 3-month or 6-month timeframe that was agreed upon during implementation, so that it does not have to be escalated to you and your team or your HR team. So that first call into customer care, they can enter the override, member is good to go. So that's a little bit of the background with implementation. Carla and I join all of the implementation calls so that we are fully aware of your preference for grandfathering, and so that we get to learn about you and your team during that entire process. After your plan goes live, then we do transition to that day-to-day contact. We take over from our implementation team. So I'll let Carla speak to the clinical aspect. She's the pharmacist on the account.
Hello. Again, as Laura mentioned, we're highly involved in the implementation process throughout the, from the start to the end. What my role as the pharmacist is so I review the claims. We have an old set of claims, which if you're looking in the document that we provided, that is a little old information, but we would get current claims. And then I would go through and review several areas that we find are disruption. For instance, the prior authorization. So if they currently have a prior authorization in place, we try to look at that and make sure that we grandfather them for a specified period of time so that they're either able to go through the prior authorization process or switch to a formulary alternative. The other, category would be not covered drugs, of course. We want to make sure that they're covered. Again, during the implementation process, we would discuss internally, what makes sense. But I did put some recommendations down. Typically, 3 to 6 months, and then we send letters out notifying the members that there will be a change, and then we look to the members and the doctors to work through making any changes or changing the drug. So, and again, specialty medication, as Erin already alluded to, I highly recommend not messing with any of those. Those are, high-touch medications, so we typically grandfather those for life. But again, it's all, part of a collaboration and making sure that it fits the client's needs.
And so in addition to the welcome letter we would send out to the members, welcoming them to Navitus, we also send out a clinical transition letter. So in the event you chose a 90-day grandfather period, they would receive a letter letting them know which medication is grandfathered, when it will no longer be covered, and then it does list alternatives. And then similarly with the specialty medications, we do have a specialty pharmacy, Lumicera, and they would also receive a letter welcoming them to Lumicera. We have a very high-touch service at that pharmacy, so they are always receiving phone calls from our pharmacy technicians to let them know they're due for a refill. They have a set of questions they will ask about those medications to make sure there aren't any side effects, and then they also have access to a pharmacist at all times in the event that they have questions about their medications. So there will be several communications that we would send to your members just to make sure they know, for the medications they're taking, what's the next step as they are going through this transition.
How many medications are we talking about?
Well, I have totals, so, and again, this is older data. It might change with the newer data, but there were 81. Well, we didn't have member level information, so we just had claim numbers. So if you note on the last column, or the last row, in the disruption tab, there were 81 prior authorizations that would probably need grandfathering. 41 claims of step therapy medications, and see, 973 of the not covered prescriptions. And then lastly, for the specialty medications, 115 claims.
So, and some of these medications, it is I'll call it easy switch at the pharmacy. So for example, Synthroid is a brand product that is for thyroid, and we do cover the brand product for plans that have a flat copay because we receive a post-patent rebate on that medication. We pass that money back to the plan, but because of that rebate for the plan, that medication is the lowest net cost. If the member is on levothyroxine, that is something the pharmacy can just switch right at the pharmacy. There is not any additional outreach to a doctor. They don't have to call customer care. That's an easy switch. There are a few others, as Carla had mentioned, the specialty medications that we would grandfather for life, so those members don't even know that medication is not covered. It will be a prior authorization. That medication, first-time member goes in to fill. It will process as it currently is processing.
It's, it's easy for you in the pharmacy, but if I'm taking the medication for 10 years and then I go in and all of a sudden they're telling me I got to take something else, I'm not going to be happy. No,
Correct.
Even if it is the same thing, we know that. So I hope HR is ready for this, and I think it's not going to be an easy transition like we're hearing about.
We try to make it as smooth as possible, and we do really work very closely with your HR team, if that's what how you would like us to work together. Otherwise, we work very closely with the team at Aaron Collins to really discuss what we're seeing within this disruption report and really find out how you want to proceed. And if there are certain members that need a little extra hand-holding, we are happy to reach out and make that contact to see how we can help transition them on July 1st.
I think we're going to have to, do a better job of reaching out to our employees on this one so they don't find out about it when they're picking up their medications. And, I don't think it's going to be easy transition at all.
Well,
actually.
Madam Chair, it's actually, and I'll take this one, recognize this one may get my head beaten in with a stick later, but actually the transitions are highly managed. So they're getting lettered 3 months ahead of time so they know it's coming. And there are processes, and frankly, what we find is because of the grandfathering, how flexible it is when we've done a number of these, there tends to be very, very little yelling at the end of the time, because the options are there. And what we find too, remember, there's some people who they'll have different copay structures that aren't to their benefit. They may be something's at a higher one, but it goes the other way too. So you get a fair number that switch because their medications now are available in generic that actually saves them. So there's actually a lot of positive that comes out of it too.
Okay.
So we do very deliberately manage it to minimize that disruption and the noise. You're always going to have some that no matter what you do, you find awkward ones. But we've had very, very good luck with Navitas working through some of those really complex ones.
Going to hold you to that.
I know, I'm putting myself, if I've ticked off Carla or Laura, I'm sure they're going to, let's tweak this one. Make sure he gets a beating. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. There's a lot of work that'll happen behind the scenes, but it'll start on the roll, and once we start passing them current files, once we have the HIPAA agreements done, where they can actually go down and identify to the individual level so they can letter and give those people a resource specific to their medication. A very, very good process.
Madam Chairman? Yes. Was part of this change predicated on customer satisfaction and price, or?
Madam Chair, Mike, yes, both. And it's based on specifically on Navitas' track record. That's why we brought them to the table and the other ones, because when it comes down, we've worked with them, we've worked with a bunch of PBMs or several PBMs, but their customer service has been second to none.
Madam Chair, may I? So I work at Navitas because of our customer care. I actually worked in a retail pharmacy in Madison, Wisconsin for 12 years prior to moving to Navitas. So I was on the front lines dealing with the members that came in and didn't have coverage or needed a prior authorization. And our customer care is located in Appleton, Wisconsin, so it's a local call. I, as a client services executive, am calling into the same customer care line that your members call into. So if you were to email me with a question, I am talking to the same agents that your members talk to. So I have a lot of experience dealing with our customer care. And as I mentioned, we empowered them to make the decisions on the call so that those callers and the members, when they're contacting customer care, it is first call resolution. Our customer care is not they're not rated based on the volume. They're rated on making sure that caller does not call back again with that same issue. And so they will take the time, they will make additional calls, they will call the pharmacy to really help those members, because they understand that, if you go in with a child that's sick, you need that now. And so they really make sure that whatever they can do to help those members at the pharmacy, it's taken care of.
Okay. Oh, Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering about the transition, because I am the HR and we will be getting these questions. Our open enrollment normally goes a month after the board approves it. Will that be enough time to get us some information to give to our employees during the open enrollment period instead of waiting until July?
Yes, definitely. Yep, we can get you member flyers with general information about Navitus, our customer care, as long as we can get a shell of a benefit, just so if you have deductibles, out-of-pockets, and copays, we can have that built right away, so that if they need to call right now for our customer care will have access to that. We may not have eligibility, but even if they would call, they would be able to see a benefit and kind of help walk through what a formulary would look like, and medications that may or may not be covered.
Right, because, during open enrollment, we would prefer to be able to tell them up front and then at least advise them that letters will be coming
Yes.
from the new pharmacy, and that it'll be a smooth transition and help numbers and all that kind of stuff. That would be beneficial for us.
Definitely, we can get that information to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Berlin has a comment or question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to the thyroid, I know that people who are on thyroid medication have to go to the doctor frequently to get this changed. Is this going to be something that is equal, or are they going to have to worry about having their blood tests and going back and forth to the doctors? Because in 3 months in Kingman, you can't even get an appointment, first of all.
And that won't change. Again, thyroid prescriptions change on a regular basis until they're titrated up to the appropriate dose. The generic, if you choose to go with the post-patents, then they would actually get the brand name for the generic copay. And it's less expensive for the plan, and the member actually gets a brand name product. So typically, we have not seen any problems with the thyroid.
So it's just a straight across, the
It's a straight
exact same
across,
prescription?
yeah,
for
same as the way they've been doing it right now. Titrate, if the doctor needs to change, they'll get the new prescription.
And I see that opioids are on here as not covered. What happens to the few people left in the world that can still get those from their doctor?
There are just certain medications on our formulary of opioids that are not covered. Typically, Navitus only has the long-acting products with the abuse deterrent agents in them. So those are the only ones that are on our formulary. Again, there's many options. There's not a loss of options for opioids on our formulary. And we can definitely share a formulary with you guys if you're interested in seeing that. Yeah, okay.
Were opioids covered on our last plan?
Always, Madam Chair. Yeah, the opioid, they're always there. It's just a matter of what mechanism. You'll notice that what we've talked about here and the same thing with the cities is that balance we discussed yesterday in terms of mental health and substance abuse. It's just how do you make sure that the people who need the medications can get them for the appropriate uses. So
Right,
these are the ones
but
that
these are the
marked.
long-acting ones.
Correct.
But people who are in sort of temporary pain need the short-acting ones.
Those are on the formularies
Oh,
as well.
okay. Then never
Yeah,
mind.
that's not a problem, yeah.
Apologize. So it kind of appears that, we as a county are going to have to get the information out, so our employees are comfortable with the transition. And I just hope they don't find out at the pharmacy, that they understand why we're doing this and how it's going to work. And that is according to Mr. Collins, who's promised me this is going to be smooth.
I'll tell you, Madam Chair, just so you know, too, it makes me smile, but I'm willing to put myself out there because we've done so many of these transitions that there will be there's always something that goes wrong, but it will be, on an overall basis, it'll be a very smooth process. The number one problem will be we're going to recard everybody.
Yeah.
Because we have to switch from Magellan to Navitus, right? So the number one problem we will get most often, and where Ken's phone is going to ring, is they'll hand them the card, but the texts and whatnot are busy. They won't code in the correct one, the claim will reject.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that- The issue is going to be, and it's just, you got to get that card in, you got to get it into the system, and until that happens, it's going to reject. That's what our complaints are going to be. It's going to be, Ken, what did you guys do? This stuff is terrible. They're telling me I can't get my drug. Well, did they put the right card in? Because it's going to have another account.
Yeah.
That'll be the vast majority of the complaints, will be
Right.
those cards.
I think that the information's really going to have to get out there department by department, sort of personally and, okay. A question, a comment? No. No? Okay, do we need a motion for this?
I'll make a motion to approve a contract with Novetis as a prescription benefit manager for MCEBT effective July 1st, 2019.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Welcome. Number 5, discussion and possible action regarding MCEBT vendor renewals effective July 1st, 2019.
Okay, so Madam Chair, trustees, what these are in the budget is these items are contracts that have actually, where the current, whatever multi-year agreement or single-year agreement we had has actually expired. Okay, so these are just the ones that are essentially changing or where we have to do an amendment to the agreement. So just to run through them, Standard Life has offered a 2-year rate, basically a rate hold at the rates that are shown. So it's 26.4 cents per thousand for life, and then it's 3.5 cents per thousand for AD&D. The short-term disability is 27 cents per thousand. Meritain is holding their network fee at $7.50 PEPM. This is the Aetna network for the other 49 states. Teladoc increasing from $1.30 to $1.55 per employee per month. American Health Group is holding their rates through June 30th, 2020, and Blue Cross is offering these these rates for the next 3 years. And on all of these, I would point out on Standard and on Blue Cross in particular, you're not signing a 3 or 4 year contract. These operate as rate caps. So you have the option of canceling them later. In particular with Blues, because of the cost of that network, when they came out with their original, and you're seeing the rates that were negotiated subsequent to the initial pass. So these are down, I believe, 50 cents PEPM from their original request. But we felt that given the changes at Blues, the fact they were going to be implementing the Blue Card in subsequent years, that it would be in the trust's best interest if we could lock a cap in, because then it's your choice. For example, as Mike asked yesterday, if we want to go out and evaluate the Aetna network for all 50 states versus the Blues, we've got a rate cap, so we know coming in what our numbers are going to be, and then we can evaluate against that, and with both of them, quite frankly, leverage whatever rate offer they might make based on Chris, the actuary's evaluation. So my primary thing is letting you know what these operate as ceilings, so you guys don't get surprised in a subsequent period of time.
Okay.
And then we've premised our current, the 1920 budget based on the applicable charges from here.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Any questions? I just have one little question about Mayo. So are we in or out?
You're out.
Okay. That was my question.
Good answer.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I guess I need a motion.
I'll move to approve the following vendor contracts as presented and authorized by ECA to work with the Ken Cunningham, Human Resources Director, to review contracts and to sign and approve contracts effective July 1st, 2019. Meritain Health, Aetna Network, and Teladoc fees, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona, American Health Group, Standard Life.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 6, discussion and possible action regarding 2019 to 2020 MCEBT budget benefit changes and rates.
Okay, so Madam Chair and trustees, so where we left this yesterday, just to recap very quickly, was that Chris's recommendation included that you could theoretically cut the rates. That was not recommended because we've all seen the volatility, so essentially the recommendation from Chris's side was for both the medical and dental, take a rate pass, you don't need to do any benefit changes. On top of that, ECA made 2 suggested changes. One was that we cut the copay for Teladoc from $25 down to $10, and if you'll remember, we're still seeing from Rick's presentation a lot of, enough stuff going to the ER that could be going to a lower level of care, right, that the intent of this is to encourage people, if they wish to seek that out, to more actively use Teladoc. And it's actually a money saver all around. With Chris's projections from the actuary, it's a small savings over the course of the year. So that recommendation seemed to be okay. The second one where we had some questions come up was that we were recommending, ECA was recommending going to full mental health parity, which would essentially take the caps off for numbers of hospitalizations, durations of hospitalizations, and then implementing through Holman a mental health substance abuse case management process. We also recommended, at that point we recommended leaving the copays for office visits for mental health and substance abuse at the specialist copay. So some concerns were raised by the trustees that might open the trust to undue financial expense. And in essence, what our recommendation, or the direction that we got, was go back, recrunch it, come up with another recommendation. Ta-da, we did that. Okay. So we huddled last night, and what we came up with is, and actually I got to credit Mike, because Mike, as he walked by, just kind of said, hey, why don't you look at this? And actually we went back to our office afterwards, and it turned out, Mike, we'll hire you next because your consulting worked quite well. We tweaked it a bit, but we got it, okay? So what we came up with is number one is to mandate that for planned admissions to mental health or substance abuse, anything inpatient, they're required to pre-certify it, which we did not include in the original one, okay? That was just, and candidly, that was a miss on my part, okay? So mandatory pre-certification for any inpatient stay through Holman Group. Secondly, to limit inpatient, so we're going to not go to full mental health parity. We're going to continue with the opt-out under federal law for mental health parity, but limit inpatient stays to 1 stay per year, not to exceed 30 days, and a maximum of 3 stays per lifetime. Done. Okay? And it's lesser of logic. None of the days roll over. So if you use a 14-day stay 1 year, you use 28 or 30 the next, the 14 don't roll. None of those roll. So maximum of 90 days, a maximum of 3 stays, and a maximum of 30 days in any 1 year. Okay? And then we're recommending, secondly, to steer people towards a lower cost, or to encourage basically outpatient settings and office visits instead, is we're recommending lowering the copay for office visits from the specialist to the primary care. Okay? But then leaving the 30 visit cap in per year. And then obviously the other restriction on that is that they would be restricted to in-network Arizona Blues for in-state, and then the Aetna network for out-of-state. So and just as a ballpark, when we ran that, and Chris, put his eye of newt hat on and stirred the pot, and the costs for that the projected cost for that dropped from $45,000 to $32,000 per year with those restrictions on it. Be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Does everyone think? Yeah? I think it sounds good. That's a good compromise. Okay.
Madam Chair, thank you. If we're reducing the number, which I agree that 3 times is better than lifetime forever, but is 30 visits enough for some of these people for follow-up?
I'm going to have to defer to Mike because for the clinical side.
Madam Chair and members, that's a good question. It's always a question is how much time does it really require? We think 30 based on experience is probably effective for an individual for follow-up. So our position with that is yes.
Okay, is there anything else? Questions, comments? Then I guess I need a motion for this too.
And Madam Chair, can I clarify the motion?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So what you would be doing, and maybe a suggested motion would be to approve the current rates for 1920, with the changes being a reduction in the copay for Teladoc from 25 to 10, and then just to go through my notes again so we have it in the record, and on the mental health and substance abuse to implement, to award the contract for the mental health substance abuse case management to Holman, as presented yesterday, to implement mandatory pre-certification for all inpatient mental health and substance abuse stays, all of this is effective 7/1, to modify the inpatient benefit to 1 inpatient stay per year, 30-day max per stay, 3 stays per lifetime as a max. And then to reduce the mental health substance abuse copay from the $50 to the 25, or to the, to the primary care copay.
Okay, I just, a little comment, a little question. So if somebody's in a facility for 30 days and it's recommended that they need like another 2 weeks or 15, can they appeal? Or is it, that's just it?
Good point of clarification. It would not be an appeal, and the semantic on this one is important, because an appeal assumes that a benefit has been misapplied or misinterpreted.
Okay.
That would be a request for an exception.
An exception, and that
Request for
people can do that?
They can do
There's-
that. I will tell you, they are rarely granted.
Okay, and who makes that decision?
The trustees ultimately make that decision.
Okay.
So what would happen in that case is we would probably send it out for an external review. So there was somebody who actually, as a clinician, who could do the process and was totally separate. We would use the same process we're required to use under healthcare reform. So it goes out to an independent review, they look at the medical facts, and then you still make the decision. But frankly, even with that, medical necessity does not change the benefit schedule.
Okay. Everyone all right with that? Okay, that was a long motion. Does it need to be read back? Or can we just so move it?
Madam Chair, I'm going to defer to Ryan on this one, hoping that he doesn't ask me to read it back.
I believe it's all in the record, and we've got it all in the record. So if we can move to approve, motion to approve the statements that said by Aaron Collins, something along those lines.
Do that?
So moved.
Okay, that's good?
That's good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And thank you for, after that long day yesterday, getting together and making us, coming up with something that really works. Thank you.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
All right, number 7, discussion and possible action regarding reinsurance renewal process.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the trust, this is an annual one, and in essence what this is we're going to shop the reinsurance. We do it every year. The date is fungible. We don't typically have time to come back to the trustees and get a meeting scheduled. So what we're asking for here is we want to shop it. We'd like to have the authority to get with Ken, review the numbers with him, make our recommendation, have him bind the coverage, and then we bring the renewal back to the trustees for retroactive approval after the fact. But frankly, all this does is recognizes the time sensitivity of that and the nature of the data that's going back and forth. And just to give you a real clear example, we sign off with the TPA that the data we're giving them is accurate, and it's literally as of that moment. So if, for example, we then find out there's another large case, there's been a car wreck, somebody's on the jet ski down at Bullhead and they get run through the props, in that interim, then everything blows up. So we bind it as of the moment we get the best option. Ken approves it, then we bring it back to you. But I just want to emphasize it's a super time-sensitive issue. You pull the trigger when you've got the absolute best you can do. And we don't have the time to call a meeting in a week and get everybody together and whatnot. So annual process. So your motion would be, if you're so inclined, would be to authorize the HR director to work with ECA to bind the renewal and then bring it back to the trust for approval at its next meeting.
Going to do that.
Move to approve ECA to work with Ken Cunningham, Human Resources Director, to negotiate and bind the reinsurance renewal effective July 1st, 2019, and bring that back to the Board of Trustees.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On to 8. This is an administrative update.
And the last two, Madam Chair, just FYI, I note I have signed in blood that this will be a smooth transition.
Thank you.
In addition, what we'll do is we'll work with Ken and his staff to prep materials, just explaining them. And frankly, I think overall, I think we're going to have a good renewal. It'll be, here's the changes, which are essentially none. The premiums aren't going up. The benefits have not been reduced. In fact, they've been increased. We'll do some education to make them aware of what's coming with Holman in terms of providing that resource and assistance on mental health and substance abuse. and we'll be available throughout that. And then we, as always, will take all this information. You'll remember, once a year, I say it's the least read document, but frankly, one of the most critical from our perspective is we'll update that risk management plan, the business plan the trust operates. It'll incorporate all the changes you've made, and that way we've got our documentation on what we've done.
Very good.
That's it.
Thank you. Anyone have any last thing to say about this renewal this year? Thank you. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Like you said, it's probably the least read document, and not all employees show up for open enrollment. So perhaps it would be beneficial to not only send that to all the employees so that they could toss it, but to send it to Ken so that he could send it to department heads, and we could also send that out. Something sometimes coming from a department head maybe gets read a little bit more often than some of our other junk mail.
It's actually a really good idea.
She went there.
Thanks for the obvious, Berlin. Thank you. Never thought about that in 10 years, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's a very good idea. Thank you very much. And, before we adjourn, well, I have a request for future are there requests for future action? Anyone? Okay. So this was our first time doing this in this auditorium and live streaming it, and I think it went really, really well. I want to thank everybody, and Nathan and Ginny and everyone who made this happen. I think it worked well, and for those who are watching, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and if you have any questions, comments, ideas, suggestions, you can come to me, you can come to Ken Cunningham. You can leave Mike alone. Or Mike Hendricks. We'll all, what?
Call Aaron.
Yeah, come to us first. But I really hope that you learn this and what we do every year to make your benefits the best what we can offer at a price we can afford. And I think we do a pretty good job. Thanks to the trustees always for giving their time every year and quarterly, coming out for this and doing that for our employees and for the taxpayers. Thank you very much. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting.